Welcome to Some Joyful Noises, a music podcast with no rhyme, rhythm, or reason. This show is a proud member of the Anazao Podcasts Network. The reason we do this show is for community, not because any of us are music experts, but rather because we believe that music helps shape community, and that's something that's really important to all of us at the Anazao Podcast Network. I'm Joshua Knoll. I am the producer of this show. I say producer and not host because this show has no host. It has no schedule. It has no format. You are just as much the host as I am. If you would like to find out how you could lead your own episode of Some Joyful Noises, then listen to the end of the show for an invitation to lead your own conversation on this podcast. We hope you enjoy this show with no rhyme, no rhythm, and no reason. This is the launch week for our podcast, Some Joyful Noises. The two most important things for a successful podcast is one, reliability and consistency. And then number two is the best first foot forward that you can put. Since this show has no plan and no schedule, we're going to drop the ball on consistency. That means it's extra important that we have a good first foot forward, and we're asking for your help. There's a few things you can do that'll take less than 5 minutes and cost you absolutely nothing that can help our show put our first foot forward. So here's 5 things that will take you less than 5 minutes to do for no cost that would help us. Number 1, share the show. Find a friend, share the show with someone. Number 2, rate and review our show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Number 3, go to podchaser.com and rate and review the show there. Number 4, join our Facebook group, Some Joyful Noises. And then, of course, number 5 is just enjoy the show. Be sure to subscribe, and if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go to the menu of our podcast to select automatic download. That'll help increase our downloads and tell the algorithms that this show's really important. All of these are also going to be down below in the description in case you forget any. Thank you all again so much, and we hope you enjoy the show. This episode is a repost from the Whole Church podcast. The original audio can be found with link down in this episode's description. We hope you enjoy it, and if you would like more from the Whole Church podcast, feel free to follow them as well as all of the other shows that are a part of the Anazao Podcast Network, also with the link in this episode's description. Enjoy this conversation about the Postmortem album by Johnny Cash, Songwriter. This episode is by myself, Joshua Knoll, TJ Blackwell, and a guest, Nick Polk. Thank you for listening.
2 Timothy 1 verses 4 through 8 in the New American Standard Bible say, "Recalling your tears, I long to see you, so that I may be filled with joy. I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I'm persuaded it now lives in you also. For this reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. So do not be ashamed of the testimony about our Lord or of me, his prisoner. Rather, join with me in suffering for the gospel by the power of God." St. Paul writes here from prison to Timothy, a younger leader in the faith. St. Paul connects the faith that Timothy inherited from his mother to an invitation to suffer together for the gospel with him. Nick Polk, how can our faith help unite us both to one another's across the globe now, as well as to those who have gone before us?
It's a deep question. I think there are just things that humans need to draw us closer together. And one of those things, it might be the thing, is common purpose. And so faith can help unite us under a common purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Smart guy, smart dude.
Oh.
Hey everybody, welcome to possibly your favorite church unity podcast. I'm sure there are others, and if there are that you like more, again, let us know. We'll invite them on, and we'll have a big unity powwow, because that's sort of the point of unity podcasts. Anyway, hey guys, I am one of your co-hosts, Joshua Knoll, and I'm happy to announce this one. Legends have been told. In fact, people even called me a liar. They were like, you don't really have a co-host. You just do the show by yourself. Show me the proof. Well, back for his triumphant return is the one, the only, the almighty Tiberius of the Juan River. Welcome to your show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Feel good to be back or just back?
I'm back.
And we're also here with our favorite return guest. We had him on once and then I was like, hey, let's have him 2 more times in the same month because for some reason we've known him for years and just now got around to having him on the show. We got to make up for lost time with the beautiful, the wonderful Nick Polk. How's it going?
So good, dude. So good.
Yeah. And, I'm obligated to mention Tolkien Pop, Tolkien Society, Malorn, Wesleyan. John Wesley himself, I think, works for Nick. Unsure.
Yeah, he is my manservant.
Yeah, many ghosts come to Nick and say, hey, when I go back to my time, what should I write? And Nick gives them verbatim scripts.
Yeah, I am taking clients to commune with the dead. So,
yeah, all of this is completely factual and accurate, as is everything we say.
Yeah. And if you'd like to hear more of the completely factual, accurate things that we say, you can check out the Anazao Ministries Podcast Network website. The link is below for other people who, like us, only say factual and accurate things. You can also chat with us on Discord for even more factual and also accurate things that we say.
Yeah, totally true. I forgot to mention today's topic. We're going to be talking about, I know people have been listening to the show for a long time going, hey, listen, this is a Church Unity podcast. Where the heck is Johnny Cash in all this? Well, good news. Today we're talking about the new Johnny Cash album, Songwriter. And for all those who went, wait a minute, new album, he's dead. Yep, that's what we're talking about. Not just his album, as well as some other post-mortem works. We're going to talk about some of what's been done with Tolkien's work posthumously, other musical artists who've passed away and written, and even some stuff in the Bible that maybe was written after the people passed away. And does that take away from the authority of the Bible if the person was dead when the book was written? We'll see. We'll see what everybody thinks. And this was meant to, and I have to call myself out as a liar. Last time we did a round table, and it was me and 2 others. I was like, don't worry, next episode we'll have more people than today's round table. Well, I was wrong. We still have 3 people. And this was a follow-up. So what happened was on our other podcast, Systematic Ecology, we did a big review of Taylor Swift's new album, obviously, because why wouldn't we? And Nick was supposed to be on that. And then Nick had to miss for some reason, I forget. And we're like, don't worry, we'll do a makeup where Brandon will come back and we'll still have you on and we'll just do a different album. And we were supposed to have Nick and Brandon here together to talk about Songwriter so we could keep this music reviews going. Brandon was unable to make it last minute this time. I think it was to get revenge for Nick missing last time. And then in about a month, me and someone completely different, John Erdley, are going to do another music review. So I think of this as like a 3-parter. Me and John are going to be reviewing Eminem's new album. So that'll be fun.
That's fantastic.
Nick might be there for that too then. To be determined. So that's today's topic. And as always, we like to start with a silly question because that is just, that's how you do Unity. You got to practice it. And the best way is through sacrament of silliness. Today's silly question is a good one. It is, if you could have Johnny Cash cover any one 90s cartoon theme, which would it be? I'm going to go first because I don't want anyone to take mine and to give Nick plenty of time to think about this one. I have 2 answers. I have a real answer, and then I have a dumb answer. So the real answer, I'll just give the real answer, and if no one says the dumb answer, I'll say it later. The real answer is Cat Dog. I just think his voice lends to it. I think it would work, and I would appreciate it. Yeah. TJ, do you have which one would you want Johnny Cash to cover?
There are so many good answers for this. Like an absurd amount. I think we should have all listed 5 personally. But I'm going to say Arthur.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah.
That is a fun
Arthur's theme song by Johnny Cash would be incredible.
Oh, that is good. All right, Nick, where you at, man?
I'm going to go for Family Guy. I think the intro to Family Guy would actually be a Johnny Cash rendition would actually be really cool. Show tunes translated to Johnny Cash style country. Yes, please.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Good answer.
Yeah, I have to actually realize that my silly one wouldn't work because I was thinking Teletubbies, but that's not actually a cartoon. So
no, it is not.
That doesn't work.
Ooh, Dragon Tales. Answer I just thought of another one.
Dragon Tales.
Rocko's Modern Life was my favorite, and I think he'd be great at it. It's a little bit more upbeat than a lot of his songs, but he could pull it off.
Magic School Bus.
Yes. TJ for the win.
There's so many good. Dexter's Laboratory.
Yeah.
Are there words to that?
Yeah,
I'm unsure that there's a wrong answer.
there are words like they stopped using the words after a little while.
Oh, really?
But yeah, if you like watch season 1, there's words in the Dexter's Lab theme song.
I think it'd be interesting to hear him try to do SpongeBob, because SpongeBob still started in the 90s, right?
Yeah, 99.
99? Yeah.
Pokemon?
That's okay. All right. We gotta move on from that.
One more? Dragon Ball.
Oh.
All right. So give everybody a little bit of background of first, like what kind of music we all enjoy. I said when I did the Taylor Swift one, I'm more folksy, think Mumford & Son, Noah Kahn, that kind of stuff. Just kind of where I vibe. Passenger's my favorite artist. I was talking about earlier. I might go see a Passenger show in Nashville so I could see Nick Polk, but we'll see. Yeah. Really, I'm going to listen to Passenger, but I'm going to go see Nick Polk. Passenger's a sideshow.
Right.
And then maybe I'll serenade you. I don't know.
That sounds fantastic. TJ, what about you? If you had to tell people what are your musical interests sound like?
Varied.
That's pretty true.
Yeah. I really feel like I know a lot of people say, I listen to a little bit of everything, but I really do. Yeah. And I do constantly, because I only ever listen to my liked songs on Spotify. So every song I've ever liked might play next.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's been on your recents?
Recently, I'll give you the list. Yeah. Green Grass and High Tides by the Outlaws.
Okay.
Otaku Hot Girl by Megan Thee Stallion. Hot One, Denzel Curry, Tia Corinne, great song. First Love, Late Spring by Mitski. Sunday by the Cranberries. Edward 40 Hands by Mom Jeans. Using You by Mars Argo. Psycho Killer, Talking Heads. The Rattling Bog from Seamus Kennedy.
Wait a minute. Nice. Rattling Bog is that's my favorite.
It's an Irish classic, dude.
7 Words, Deftones. Rich Girl, Daryl Hall, John Oates. Lonely Eyes, Front Bottoms. Dragon Ball Durag Remix, Thundercat, Smino.
Yeah, literally could be literally. I have been in his car, in the same car ride, have listened to the entirety of the Ratatouille theme, as well as I think it was metal. I don't have good terms for that particular style of music, because once it starts screaming, my brain goes, "Yep, metal," and I just classify it all as the same. Yep. Mm-hmm. I know that that's wrong for the record, but it's what I do. Nick, what about you, man?
For those who have heard me on other podcasts, it's I'm putting myself in a box here, but it's punk music. I was looking at my recents, and I've been listening to a lot of the Clash, especially their first self-titled album, which is just back-to-back masterpiece. Stuff after that is kind of hit or miss for me. Big punk guy, and connecting to Johnny Cash, punk's all about simplicity and anti-establishment, and Johnny Cash has both of those elements. So
yeah. And of course, your favorite punk artist is still Taylor Swift.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. London Calling, not a good album. Bad.
I'm actually not a fan. I'm not a fan of London Calling. Sorry, everybody.
Man, tough crowd.
Anyway, Nick, I do know you like Taylor Swift. What was your take on the new album? Because it's been very varied across everybody. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people are like, it's just another Taylor Swift album.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm in the latter. It's just a Taylor Swift album. It's good. I enjoy it. There's some songs I can musically, it's fine. And there are some good ones. Lyrically, probably on the weaker side. There's just, I respect some of the expression, but there's a lot of self-victimization that I think is kind of manufactured without dismissing some of the real elements of her life that she does bring in. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I thought there was a few really good ones and a few that I was like, I could not listen to that again and be fine. So I don't know, it wasn't cohesive enough. I think that would be my biggest complaint, because there's some like Cassandra. I love that song. I think it's great. But then as a whole, I'm like, this doesn't fit with the other things you're saying, though. This feels like it should have been part of folklore or something. Why is this here? Yeah. Anyway.
I love Florence and the Machine.
Ooh. Okay.
So the one song that Florence is on is really good. I like that one.
Which one's that?
Florida.
You know what's funny is I just don't like that song.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I was so upset because it's about Florida, so I wanted to like it. It's titled Florida, and I'm just like, yeah. That whenever her voice comes on, I'm like, I don't like this. Just ruined it for me. It was sad.
Not a big Florence and the Machine head, Josh Noel.
What's weird? Some of her other songs I dig. Just for some reason on this one, I'm like, I just don't like your voice here. I don't know what it is. Anyway, that's one album that came out this year. Are there any other albums that came out this year that you guys been digging, or something that you've just discovered this year as far as like music goes that you're like, yeah, this is pretty sick?
I've run into this issue a lot, just meeting people and talking about music. I don't engage with music on an album level typically. Like I'll know my favorite songs I like, artists that I like, and I'm like, oh, what's your favorite album? And I'm like,
funny,
I have no idea, dude. Don't. Like, I discovered this band last year and I play all their songs on shuffle.
That's hilarious. Oh man, it depends on the artist. Like there's some artists that I'm like, yeah, I have to hear it like in album. Well, oddly enough, Taylor Swift's one of those, like, because most of her albums are cohesive enough that I like to hear it and hear like the range of the story or the emotion all as she intended it to be laid out,
Right.
But then you have artists that I'm like, I just love, like Mumford & Sons. I love their music, but I don't have to listen to their albums in order or anything. I'm just like, just fun, folksy, nice. Usually the words are deep, but they don't rely on other songs. One of those that I discovered this year, that came out this year. So Judah and the Lion is one of my favorite artists, and their albums aren't so consecutive because, they're a newer band. And I feel like newer bands don't do the album thing as much because they know that most people just kind of hit shuffle. They're on their app. They're not listening on a CD.
Singles, hits, right.
We don't have records anymore. Yeah. But he did an album this year that released that was like detailing his journey of like after his divorce with his wife and that whole process. And it goes through the whole stages of grief. So he's like, literally, it's a 5-part album that's like, so it starts with denial and then he goes into it, and I'm like, oh, and it builds beautifully. And you can also listen on shuffle, and there's just a few songs on there like Heart Medicine, Long Dark Night, that I'm like, oh yeah, just beautiful songs. So that's a lot of fun. I'd say they're a pretty unique sound though, because it's like folk and pop and a little bit of rock, and hard to define what Judah and the Lion is.
Yeah, I saw them open for Matt Carney a few years ago. Yeah.
I even like when someone asked me if they're Christian, I'm just like, I for a while I just said no. And then the more I hear their songs, I'm like, no, they are. If I say yes, what you think of as Christian music is not what they are.
Right.
Like Long Dark Night of the Soul is definitely a reference to a theologian. And he even talks about finding healing in suffering and, life and death. And he's using these these very Christian-esque terms, but never says Jesus. And he's like, hey, this effing hurts. And you're like, yeah, Christian music can't use the F word. So it's like, I don't know how to answer your question here. Is it Christian? Well, let's say non-Christian. When Taylor Swift goes through a breakup, it's, hey, screw that guy. This song is, hey, I originally felt hurt, and at the end of the album, I'm wishing her the best and finding ways that I can provide healing in all situations, and I have found life in my suffering. And it's like, yeah, that message is Christian, but he's not like, hey, Jesus, everybody say Jesus a bunch,
I've been telling people I am waiting for a church that when the pastor says something awesome, that he says, can I get an F and amen? Where's that church? I'm ready for it.
Probably somewhere in one of our 2 states. It's either in Tennessee or South Carolina somewhere.
Or it could happen at Theology Beer Camp 2024 in Denver, Colorado.
It almost certainly will.
And if you want to go, you should go to Eventbrite, find the page, and use the code WHOLESHIRE, WHOLESHIRE, to get $50 off your ticket. It's a pretty nice deal. Yeah. So Judah and the Lion's one. Thanks to another guy that we all know, Dan Koch, who will be at Theology Beer Camp, I've learned of John Mark McMillan, who does some Christian, like deconstruction Christians music, I guess. So that's been really up my lane. Passenger did anniversary album, which is why he's doing his tour. So I've been listening to that, really getting into that one. And then, of course, anytime something pops up, Noah Kahan helped somebody do a song. I'm like, I don't care if I hate this person. I'm going to listen to this song because Noah Kahan's there. So that's where I've been with music this year. Nick, where you been this year? You've seen any new albums or anything you've been digging? Or
Yeah, there's this band that I have been returning to quite a bit. And it actually came from Tripp had a guy on his podcast, and he talked about his son being in like a classic British punk band, and they're called Play Dead, and they came out with an EP called Fly on the Wall, and it is just awesome. There's only like 4 or 5 songs, but I have been listening to it on repeat for probably a good 3 or 4 months. So,
oh, nice. Yeah. I'm embarrassed how much I've listened to Taylor Swift's new album. And also, I didn't mention, but Billie Eilish, I've listened to that album a lot that she came out with this year. I really just for like 2 or 3 songs, but
I think
those 2 or 3 songs do it for me.
As far as like albums go, the only album that I've been like actually listening to as an album recently is Bewitched, the Goddess Edition by Leve. Good.
That is certainly interesting.
Yeah, I know nothing about Leve.
She's great. That? She's so great. Basically, imagine modern bossa nova and also classical music. Also a little pop. She just has a beautiful voice and is constantly singing about love in every form. Lost love, missing love, searching for, missing out on. It's great. Bewitched, the Goddess Edition is a fantastic album.
I might actually check that out. TJ's music recommendations are usually pretty killer. Yeah.
I love that. It's Laufey, by the way, if you ever try to look it up. She's Icelandic.
Damn.
Like Bjork. You're not going to just find that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So on to the album we came here to discuss. Songwriter by Johnny Cash, put together by his son, I think was producing it or something, came together with the songs. So I don't know Nick's background, Johnny Cash. My grandfathers both really enjoyed him. I know my one grandfather's funeral, we played We'll Meet Again. Johnny Cash's We'll Meet Again. Don't know where, don't know when. And there's a lot of there's a lot of Johnny Cash music that's really connected with me. He's never been like one of my favorite artists, but it's like been a connection that's gone generations long now, I guess, at this point. And even I remember I had One Long Dark Night of the Soul, referencing Judah the Lion this time, not the theologian, where I actually just was going through some stuff, and TJ and I were supposed to go camping, and we ended up just laying on this random dock on a pond in the middle of North Carolina somewhere, and for hours into like 2 or 3 in the morning, TJ and I just found Johnny Cash, put it on shuffle on the speaker, and just sat there. It was great. So Johnny Cash is he's been there for a few moments of mine.
Is that the night we got shot at?
Yeah. You remember that?
You got shot at?
We were not directly
really
shot at. We were shot over.
Oh, God.
People didn't know we were on the dock, and they just pulled up in their pickup and just started shooting over the pond. It was quite terrifying.
Yeah. It wasn't even just us. There was other people on the other dock, and they got really mad.
Yeah. And I
didn't really care that much because I didn't die. Those other people got super mad.
Yeah.
But then you went home and listened to Johnny Cash.
I think we were done after we left the pond. I think after the gunshot, we were like, silence is...
It's time to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Nick, what about you? What was your history with Mr. Cash here?
So I was pretty anti-country growing up. And I first heard this song called The Ring of Fire, but it was not by Johnny Cash. The version I heard, it was by a punk band called Social Distortion, who covered it, who is a great classic Americana punk band, very influential, very focused on singer-songwriter type stuff, but they have a very famous cover of The Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. So that was kind of my stepping stool into Johnny Cash. And I was like, if more country sounded like this, I think I'd be into it. Now I don't have as much disdain for country as I used to. I actually really enjoy a lot of country, but I really love the simplicity, the straightforwardness, the earthiness, the commitment to like the everyday life of people in Johnny Cash's work and writings. And so from that point on, I kind of, I saw the biopic that Joaquin Phoenix did. I've listened to a lot of songs, watched the videos from the live album. And what's the name of the prison?
Man,
This one, Folsom.
Folsom. There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep. Live in Folsom Prison.
Good one.
So yeah. So then he's kind of just been there, here and there throughout my life.
Do y'all have a favorite Johnny Cash song? Also, if it's on this album, I'll be astounded.
What's the song "Meet Me in the Air"? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely. There's so many Johnny Cash songs.
That's true. He is a
For a
This is
long
like
time.
his 72nd album or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Something crazy.
It's
For a long
lot.
time, Hurt was probably my favorite, which was like his last album until this one. And it was a cover.
I was about to say, does that count?
The way he does the cover, I feel like he makes it really original, because like the original one was Crown of, blank, Crown of Crap, basically, explicit version. And he turns it to a crown of thorns and kind of uses this religious imagery to show persecution in a different light. So I feel like he kind of makes the song his own by just kind of changing that one word. I don't know.
I'm going to say I went back down then.
That's a good one.
Ain't No Grave is what it's called. Ain't No Grave.
That's also the name of my second favorite ongoing comic series right now by Scotty Young.
Ooh.
No. There was there's fun. There's a few. I always am going to have a soft spot for We'll Meet Again. As far as like covers too, of course he does This Train's Bound for Glory. That's always great.
Really
But
good.
my actual answer, The Mercy Seat, because I like songs that tell a story. And it goes through this guy who's like, no, I promise I'm innocent. And he's in the seat, and it goes through like the stages of, he's like, am I innocent? He's unsure. And then he's like, maybe I'm not innocent. And then by the end, it's like, it starts where he's in the electric chair and he starts to feel the pain and his head's on fire. So it's like this crown of fire, this crown of pain, and the pain's going here. And by the end, he's talking about hellfire. And he's like, guess I wasn't innocent. And you're like, man, it's that one hurts, but it's good. I love that kind of music. It's great. Anyway, this album doesn't have anything quite that deep. I felt like, I don't know. There's some good.
Yeah, it was super simple.
Yeah. The one I did want all of us to talk about, Hello There. It's the first song on the album, and it's, planet Earth, hello there. And he's just talking about like our experiences as humans and how we're just kind of existing here. And as Johnny Cash often does for some reason, he brings up the end times. The Alpha and Omega is going to come. The end times are going to happen. Jesus will be there. Woohoo. It's funny because I don't think anyone thinks that Johnny Cash is like particularly Christian for many reasons, but I think it's just not uncommon for people in his fold to bring up the end times. It's like, that's their brand of Christianity. Like, some people are like Old Testament, New Testament Christian, and they're like specifically apocalypse Christian.
Yeah. I think Johnny Cash more, because I think he had like some sort of soft faith, but I don't think it was something. I don't think he was like an evangelical Christian or anything like that. But I think he uses a lot of that religious imagery to convey like some of the just like angst and anxiety that he has. That's the way I interpret Johnny Cash's use of religious language like that.
Yeah. I've always seen him as kind of like what I consider to be classic Southern, maybe even like specifically Texan Christian, of like,
Totally.
I'm going to live my life, do what I can. And if God doesn't like that, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. I like it's reminiscent of like for me, I think the time he does this best is when the man comes to town, and he talks about the rider on the black horse and all that. And it's like, and I think that is true of a very common experience in the South, where like the extent to which they care about their faith, and I'll say it's just, I don't know, it's hard to know who we're talking about, but it does seem like a common experience for people who occasionally go to church, Christmas, Easter. But like the big thing is when I die or when the world comes to an end, my side's going to win, basically.
Right.
Kind of the extent of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. So Nick and I are both kind of soft universalists. He might be a little less soft than I am about it. But how does this like ring for you? Because there's so many people who are like kind of Christian. Is that kind of like you just shrug it off? You're like, I mean, eventually they're going to get there. So whatever.
I know that when I think about it in this context, I have a hard time. I understand just because my family is especially on my dad's side, is from the deep South Georgia. And then a lot of other people on my mom's side of the family are like in Central Florida, which is very Southern compared to like South Florida. But there's this sort of like cultural Christianity that isn't really lived into, like you were talking about. It's more of this kind of soft thing that's in the background. From what I interpret as this kind of safeguard from hellfire, and also political things that make people uncomfortable. So, I mean, a lot of times, especially I'm in Trump country, Tennessee, when I meet people and I go to church and stuff, and they're like, the world is just getting bad, with the spread of LGBT stuff and, people attacking Israel. And then I give them my perspective and they're like, wait, that's not Christian, and I think that I don't really care, but I have a hard time respecting it, especially when I feel like these people tend to be culturally vocal about it, but when it comes to their life, they don't actually live it out. But I don't know if Johnny Cash was like that, but
yeah. I know it's odd that I'm actually really interested to hear TJ's perspective, because I have no idea if he's universalist at all or if he's just like, yeah, they're going to burn. But I tend to think more like I don't know. I get confused by my own reaction because I get really frustrated with this kind of brand of Christianity that's more just that. It's just a brand or a comfort rather than something that's actually a meaningful part of someone's life, So I'm like, and again, we don't know this about Johnny Cash. It's just the way he talks. He knows his audience, and that's his audience. And it's just kind of like, it's frustrating that that's just part of the rhetoric that's just accepted. Because I'm like, you guys don't even, like, if I pushed you on your actual in thoughts and where does Alpha and Omega come from? What does this mean? When you say the morning star, are you talking about wormwood? Or are you talking about, and like people don't think about these things. They just kind of accept it because it's part of the culture. And I think for some reason that's frustrating, even though I do think eventually God's going to save everybody. It's just still frustrating that in the meantime, there's all these people who claim something that they don't seem to understand, and they just use it as throwaway rhetoric rather than something meaningful in their life. I don't know. TJ, what are your thoughts on this kind of stuff?
I don't know. I like to think everyone can go to heaven, be saved, but I'm not sure if everyone will. I don't know. The way I generally look at it is they will or they won't. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean,
but for now, at least, I think there is the option for them to not be. So I'm not quite universalist, apparently.
Mm-hmm. What's funny is like most days lately, I feel like I lean more towards universalist. I've been a lot more hopeful lately. But the days that I'm not feeling so hopeful, I feel like I get into a nihilist. But I never get to this like point of thinking anymore. I used to. I grew up with the thought of like eternal hell, but I never get there now. Sometimes I'll be like, maybe God is just weeding people out. Maybe they're just going to be destroyed. But like my brain never goes to, oh, he's going to torture people. Because in my mind, I just can't, at this point in my life, I can't comprehend a God that is all love that would want that. So I don't know.
I will say, I think it's very reasonable to be at work and look around you and think, man, all of you people should go to hell. That's completely fair to think.
Yeah, no doubt. As a universalist, like I'm eventually all will come to God. I see hell as like more of like a purgatorial thing, but at the same time, I'm like, I see some people and I'm like, you're going to spend a long time in purgatory, before you, make your way this way.
Yeah, that's probably where I'm at realistically, is that you're probably going to get saved, but you're probably going to have to wait a long time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like what's interesting is so music like this betrays to me, what seems like an easier way out. And I think that's also part of what frustrates me is like, it would be easier for me to just be like, yep, those guys over there getting on my nerves. They're going to go to hell. So it's fine. The political side I disagree with. Most of the people are going to hell. And one day Jesus will come back and only the people I like are going to make it. Yay, Alpha and Omega, I'm like, and I understand that. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. That sounds nice. Until I really think about it. And I'm like, that's not a loving God, which means that's not a God I want to believe in. And then it gets complicated for me because I have to think one step too far and it ruins it. Yeah. Anyway, do y'all have anything else you wanted to say about Hello Out There?
It's just, I think it's a great song. I think it points to, I think Johnny Cash was had a very negative outlook on the functioning of the world. And I think it kind of captures that feeling. And I also share, even if it's not in his religious beliefs or the way that he uses religion, I still share in his sense of doom.
Yeah. Doomer in a cool Johnny Cash way, not a lame woe is me way.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and what's fun too is like, so thinking of Johnny Cash, and we have no way of knowing when any of these songs were written. So without context, it makes it even harder to appreciate some of these.
That's not true, actually.
Oh, okay.
So we do know, or at least somebody knew, when a couple of these were written. It was over a very, very long time, but we know Hello Out There, Drive On, and Poor Valley Girl, he wrote sometime in the late 70s.
See, I don't have context for this. When did he write the song that's like Why I Wear Black?
Great question.
Well, in that song, if we assumed it was like relatively close to the same time, there's one like that song would make me think, because he says he's wearing black for the downtrodden, for those who are marginalized, for those who don't get the respect they deserve. For them, he wears black, right? And because of like some of the messaging behind that, I kind of feel like Johnny Cash isn't, oh, I want God to come back because he's going to get them Democrats, anything like that. I feel like he's more like wanting peace for the marginalized and for those who have subjugated other people to be punished, which is still not quite where I'm at. But I'm like, I like that a lot better than the side I usually hear talking about this stuff lately. Sorry, Nick, what were you saying?
No, I think too, there's one song that I think is early 90s. There's one where he talks, I think it's I Love You Tonight. Yeah, I Love You Tonight. I think that song, because he talks about we survived the 80s and we'll see it. Hopefully we'll make it to the millennium. We'll see. So you're like, okay, this is clearly written at least in the late 80s.
Yeah, before the
early 90s. Right.
Yeah, because he doesn't mention 90s at all. I'm like, man, you skipped the best decade right there, my friend.
The best one.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Back before people like TJ came to ruin it all.
I was born in the 90s.
I thought you were 2000. You were 99. Like that barely counts.
Barely is the best kind of counts.
All right. Well, let's move on to some of those other songs then. I wanted to let us all pick one song that isn't Hello Out There to talk about. Do y'all have one you'd want to pick?
I think Like a Soldier is interesting.
All right.
Because this is the second time Like a Soldier has been released. I don't know. It's not even from like, I'm not even reading super deep into it. It's just interesting to me to see the process happen like this, because he clearly had recorded Like a Soldier before, and at some point, kind of like early Taylor Swift, it changed from the vision, but now it's kind of impossible to tell if American Recordings is the version of Like a Soldier that Johnny Cash wanted in the world, or if this is closer to the one that Johnny Cash wanted in the world. Because all of these are releasings of demos that he recorded at some point.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And that's gonna reminiscent of stuff we're gonna talk about later on with like some of the Silmarillion stuff of like, is this actually the version Tolkien wanted out, or what's going on here? Yeah, man, that's interesting. I'll let Nick choose before I do mine in case I accidentally ruin his pick.
No, you won't ruin it. I think they were all the songs on this album. I really enjoyed, did not skip anything. I mean, not just because I was doing homework, but because I genuinely enjoyed everything. Like I was never like, is this song over yet? But Drive On is probably my favorite. I'm more of a music guy than a lyric guy when it comes to music, and the music and Drive On and the melody was probably what drew me in. And I think I listened to that song more than any on the album.
Yeah, I was also going to say Drive On.
Oh, really? Nice.
I still am, actually. Yeah, I'm not gonna let that ruin it for me either.
Yeah.
But for me, it actually was the messaging of it, because it's interesting, but for better or worse, he's telling the story of this guy who went to Vietnam, and it's like, hey, this happened to me in the war, but now I've got children who understand and a loving wife, right? And then he's like, this happened in the war, and now I understand my identity. And no matter what the other stuff is, like even like understanding my identity, like that's a positive thing. And he's like, yeah, but my children understand my wife loves me, and that's what's important. And I think it really connects with me for a couple of reasons. One, my grandfather loved Johnny Cash, and this sounds like his kind of song where I'm like, yeah, I know my one grandfather went through a lot. He traveled all over the world, part of the military in a few different branches at different times. And yet the thing to him that he really held on to his whole life was his family. So I was like, oh, that related to me on that level. And then also just kind of that, I do have stuff in my own life that's like past and stuff that I've dealt with and, trauma. And to be able to look at it all, like the good and the bad, and say, I'm just going to drive on is, I don't know. I think it's powerful.
Also, I feel like I may have misspoke earlier. I simply forgot that I've been everywhere.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
Great song.
Yeah, I've been everywhere, man.
That's one of his more fun songs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true,
man. All right, so moving on, because we do have a lot of other stuff we want to talk about. If you had to rate this album 0 to 10 as a whole, TJ, how are you rating this?
I don't know. It's good. 7.5.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna let Nick go last. Let him have time to think. Yeah, no, it's hard. It's really hard. There are a few really good songs, but as an album, I mean, for many reasons, it's not cohesive. For the main one being that Johnny Cash didn't write these down to like follow one another. These are just, we found some stuff and man, we wish we heard more of Johnny Cash, and now we heard more of Johnny Cash, So in that sense, it achieved what it was out to do for us to hear more Johnny Cash. But at the same time, like there's not a lot of cohesiveness. None of these are like, this is going to be my new favorite Johnny Cash song. And even still, as much as I connect with him, Johnny Cash isn't like my favorite artist. Even like just albums this year, that Jude and the Lion album is still really connected with me a lot more, So I'm like, I don't know. I feel like 7's probably right. I'm going to go with 7, rating the album as a whole. Some individual songs I'd probably put higher than a 7 out of 10, but as a whole, that sounds right. Nick, where you at?
I think I'm going to do 2 rankings. As a Johnny Cash album, like there's not, like you said, there's no cohesive vision just because they're, random songs that are found, demos that have been produced. And the production is actually pretty good, whether or not that aligns with Johnny Cash's vision. But I'd probably give it, as a Cash album, I'd give it like an 8, 8.5. Just it's really solid. The lyrics, it's stuff that we haven't heard before. Just kind of classic Johnny Cash stuff there. But as like a regular album, I'd probably go a little lower. I'd probably give it like a 6. It's good. It's okay. It's fine. There's probably, like you said, there's probably more individual songs that I'll return to than the actual album.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely a good thing to have on in the background.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Cash, nothing Johnny Cash has done is bad.
That's accurate. Oh man. All right, then let's move past Johnny Cash finally.
So there are other artists who have had post-mortem works published. So we're going to talk about a couple. Personally, Michael Jackson, This Is It. That was crazy to me when I was young. I was like, he died. I'm pretty sure it was a big thing. I'm fairly certain that guy's dead. That shouldn't be possible. What about you guys? Any post-mortem projects that you think about? You want to talk about?
Musically, I still think Mac Miller's was pretty unique as far as like things that happen, because it was almost like he somehow knew he was about to die, which made the album a lot more interesting. And I feel like the thing that's interesting in music, I feel like a lot of the times, and this might be true of art in general, it's like stuff published post-mortem or even their work in general just tends to get more popular after someone passes away.
Yeah.
It's find it interesting.
Yeah. Like Lil Peep. Like I feel like nobody knew who Lil Peep was. At least like in my high school. I was in high school when he died. No one knew who Lil Peep was except for like me, my friends, maybe like 10 other people in the school. And then he died, like give it like 1-2 weeks and everybody's talking about it. And then, you know, Shooting Stars comes out and it was like, oh, I miss Lil Peep so much. It's like, you don't.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about Triple X Tentacion.
Yeah.
You know,
no,
like I think like he had very devoted fan base. Like that's no question about that. But nobody cared about Tentacion until he died.
Yeah. Yeah, that was infuriating. Because like me and the boys, when we listened to Rip Roach at like 6:45 in the morning, you know, plugging it out to X, and it's just like he dies, and all of a sudden everybody cares. Also, Drake killed X.
Ooh,
do you really believe that?
Yeah.
Take him down, Kendrick. Take him down.
Or TJ, take them both down. I dare you.
Both?
Yeah.
Like Kendrick and Drake?
Fun.
I like Kendrick.
Just for fun. Me too, but I'd still vote for you.
Just for funsies.
Just on the side. Like, I'm going to take Drake down because he deserves it. I think Kendrick because, I don't know, kind of bored.
No, but that's when I stopped liking Drake.
Yeah, murder is a good reason not to like someone, I suppose.
Yeah.
I stopped liking him the moment I started hearing his music.
I'll say his music is good. I think he's overrated, but I like Drake's music. It's unfortunate that he sucks as a human.
Yeah.
It feels overproduced. You know, that's like, there's a lot of Taylor Swift albums I'm not super into for the same reason. That I'm like, it's too produced, you know?
It's fair.
Yeah. I like some stuff a little raw. Like Johnny Cash was great at that.
It's true. Even this, when they just took the demos, we're like, let's produce this a little.
Yeah. That's all it needed. Oh man. Yeah. Also, Juice WRLD, I didn't know they existed until that song with Eminem, which is right around the time that they died, or he died, and I was like,
Venom was out for
what a unfortunate
little while
time to
before he died. No, that was a bad time.
How long though? Yeah, I was like, wow, what an unfortunate time to discover this guy because he was good.
Juice WRLD was fantastic.
Yeah.
Juice WRLD was on his way to the top of the world.
He really was.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate. Also, Godzilla, super underrated for an Eminem song. That's all.
It's true. Mm-hmm. So, but do you think it's appropriate for people to make money off of someone's work posthumously? No, I think there are like a couple of ways. Like this is kind of special. Like Juice WRLD was working on an album when he died. Mac Miller was working on his album when he died. He almost like it kind of seemed like he planned for it to come out after he died. But what do you guys think? What's the deal here? Is that okay?
I don't know. I'm a split opinion because I feel like some production companies use the artist's death to like really promote the work and are just cashing in on someone's death. And that just feels gross. But at the same time, a lot of the times, and this can be true with other stuff we talk about too, but someone's family, a lot of times this is like what provides for their family. And I don't feel like if you asked anyone, hey man, if your works were produced after your death and it helps support your family, you would hate that, wouldn't you? Like, I don't know. Like Johnny Cash isn't like, man, my son's doing well because of my music. Oh, you know, like, no.
Yeah, I think we can take it on like a case by case basis. Like, like in that kind of scenario, like X's first posthumous album was one he was working on before he died. Skins, Mac Miller, Juice WRLD. That I kind of understand it a lot more when the label is just like, well, this is a mostly completed project. We should release this. But then they released a couple more posthumous albums for X, and that's, you know, could be someone in his estate taking advantage of his name. Not a big fan of that personally, but I do love to hear new music from my favorite artists.
I also think what complicates this right now is we're right there on the verge of like, if they had a partial song together, then we just, you know, have AI finish that song for them. And I think that's when you get to some more gray areas.
Yeah, super weird. That's the strange. We haven't even like we're barely knocking on the door of like, because that's probably going to happen in the next 20 years. If it's not happened already, you know, and people just don't talk about it. But I kind of, everything that y'all have said is kind of the same way. Like, you know, I talk about Tolkien, which I know is on here later, but, you know, just briefly, his son released his work. Tolkien really wanted to publish a lot of his stuff, but didn't get to it just because he was a perfectionist. Everybody, all of the fan base wanted his work, and Christopher, his son, organized it, published it, and it's the finances that allowed him to continue the work, to continue to give to fans and researchers. So that's something I approve of. But, you know, Michael Jackson too, because that was one that I was going to talk about. I remember going to the store and seeing those CDs and also not understanding the concept of like, oh, these are songs that he pre-recorded, because I think he did one with Akon. And I was like, how is Akon on this song with Michael Jackson? What the heck? But that seems like a cash grab. It's Michael Jackson. You know, how are you not going to post stuff if you're a big production company or whatever?
Yeah. And like that one too, it's like, y'all really didn't need that money. Like the rest of the family is also famous.
Right.
Yeah. But also, it is kind of nice to hear more Michael Jackson. Sure. It's like I would be against someone making money for AI created Johnny Cash songs, but you also offered me a song that AI created where it sounds like Johnny Cash is singing about me and how great I am and how it's okay that I have bad opinions. I'd be like, let me hear that.
Yeah. There's sort of a cross section here between, for me, for like a posthumous release and listening to the leaks of an artist, because what those leaks turn into is these posthumous albums. Mm-hmm. True. So like, I don't support listening to leaks anymore. Yeah. And it's kind of for this reason, like we're not supposed to hear it. It's not ready. That's why it's not out. And then just taking those leaks and releasing them for profit. That's kind of scummy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and there's also, you don't know an artist's reason for not releasing something. So it could be that there's something said in one of these Johnny Cash songs that he's like, I actually just don't agree with this anymore.
Right.
Maybe he actively chose not to release it for a reason. And then if you find that out, you're like, oh man, now I feel bad that this is out there, So yeah, I think case by case is probably right.
Yeah. And it's not, I think the best, show of posthumous work is going to be Tolkien's works. I think the worst might be Brian Herbert. Those 16 Dune books that nobody reads.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay.
No doubt.
Somebody needs to put a stop to Brian.
Stop him.
Man, I did feel bad for Christopher Tolkien though, because he had to deal with people like me who constantly disagreed with the choices he made. I was like, wait a minute. There's so much stuff in Legendarium that you didn't include that I need in there. And Nick already knows what I'm thinking of, but listen to other episodes with Nick to hear me complain.
Here's the thing, though, that someone like Christopher, because you're doing it in good faith,
Yeah.
He's just farming. He's just farming you. You're like, you disagree with me. Why don't you get the next book to see what you really think? You got me.
Mm-hmm.
Classic.
Yeah.
So
genius.
We've been over it a little bit. We haven't talked about C.S. Lewis's posthumous work very much. Josh, how do you feel about it?
So there are a few things that after Lewis passed away that they've been publishing, and they're still finding stuff and publishing it. And some of it is just, I don't know. The one I have the biggest issue with is probably Dark Tower. And I like the Dark Tower. But some of it, like letters that he sent back and forth, I understand why he wouldn't want to publish it. It was personal and it was somebody else's business. But now that they're both passed away, it's kind of like, well, why not have these letters? So, I think things like that, I'm like, oh, cool. It's good to see like kind of the inside of like what Lewis is thinking and feeling. And like, that was nice. And I think it's appropriate. There was one story. I can't remember what the short story is. If I felt like getting up, I'd go over my bookcase and find it. But there's one short story he didn't finish that they had. And they had a few different like proposed endings to it in the book that it's pretty interesting. Just look up short stories with C.S. Lewis. You'll find it. But what was fun is that there was two main theories of how it was supposed to end. And one was by Tolkien, because Tolkien said, no, Lewis told me how it was going to end. It was going to end this way. And then like Lewis's publisher was like, nope, that is not what he was going to do. So I always thought that was pretty interesting.
That's what worries me so much about One Piece. Murata's getting old.
He needs to finish that thing.
And mangaka are not healthy. They work too much. So there better be a few people who know what the actual ending is. And there better be a few assistants who know what it's supposed to look like, just in case.
At the very least, he just needs to write down, this is how it was supposed to end. You know, just in case. So we could just read a simple, like, couple sentences of One Piece was this. This is what the treasure was. That's all I need.
Yeah. No, that's probably actually already under, like, the Whitebeard statue.
I hope so.
Yeah, we just aren't going to know until he dies. And he's like, oh, the treasure is in Whitebeard's chest. Go destroy the statue to find out.
Yeah. What the Dark Tower, though, the reason that that's an issue, there's a very little evidence to suggest Lewis actually wrote it. And it seems pretty likely that someone else wrote it and tried to make it seem like Lewis wrote it.
Oh, interesting.
So that it could get popular and they could get their story out. And that's where I'm like, I don't know. I think I would rather you guys just publish this as anonymous than publish it with Lewis's name going, it might have been him. It's, you know, what if it wasn't?
That is really funny, though.
That is pretty amusing.
We should start saying that C.S. Lewis started the whole church.
Yeah. C.S. Lewis started the whole church podcast. And until someone proves that he didn't, or stick it to the claim. But Nick, you're more familiar with some of the problems with Tolkien's postmortem stuff, which both of us love the Silmarillion. I think we both said that that's like our favorite. That wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the postmortem work of Tolkien. So thankful for that. Are there any other like big issues people have that are like they debate though?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult job. Like Christopher Tolkien had to pick among thousands, tens of thousands, probably manuscripts to then piece together something that looked like his dad's vision of the Silmarillion. And some people have said, you know, there's some things that you've missed, things that you didn't include that you should have, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's just one of the most difficult parts is just, am I capturing the original vision of this? You know, even if, you know, it depends. And I guess time is also a factor. Like I'm at the point too, where like, I want to understand Lord of the Rings better and the Hobbit and the Legendarium, but ultimately like Tolkien's dead and his stuff's going to be in the public domain in like 30 years or something like that. Maybe more, 50, 20 years. Yeah. 20 years, I think. And I'm like, whatever. Like we don't really care how like Snow White functions or the Grimm fairy tales. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, that's a problem that Christopher Tolkien had to deal with. It's not one that Brian Herbert had to deal with. When Frank Herbert died, he had like half a notebook of notes. That's it.
And he said, I'm going to continue this.
Yeah. Now there are like 18 more books.
TJ seems really bothered by this.
I am. They're really bad.
There's literally no one I've talked to that has said, yeah, continue. Read these.
Don't. Read the first.
Literally no one.
Read the first 4. Read the first 2 if you just like it. And then read the first 4 if you really like it. And if you love Dune, you want to get as much as you can out of it, read the first 6. But never read farther than that.
Oh, man, that's funny. No, but there's another problem with like Tolkien stuff that's interesting to me is like the stuff where so far we haven't had to deal with that with any Lewis's stuff, knock on wood, whatever. But even some of the stuff that I love, Shadow of Mordor is a good example. There's a lot of stories that clearly weren't in Tolkien's mind at all that are taking place in his universe that fans of Tolkien kind of debate back and forth. You know, Rings of Power right now, some of it's based on the book, some of it they're just making up because there's not enough there. I don't know. It's interesting. If I remember right, Tolkien did say something about like hoping people expand on his own universe or something like that. But I don't know. I feel like it gets harder because you don't have him around to say, yep, that's right there with the heart of what I'm talking about. Or if he's like, that's completely antithetical to the messaging of Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yeah, I don't know if he said that he wanted people to expand on it, but he definitely wanted people to apply it to their own lives in a way that they wanted to. I don't know if he was actually pretty critical of people who even wanted to adapt his work. And the only reason he sold the rights in the first place was for a buttload of cash, essentially. That's literally what he said. He said, I will only sell the rights if it's amazing or if you offer me the right amount of money. And the latter happened. And so, for me, I think about myself as like an artist. If I had published something and I sold it, I'd want to make money and provide for my family. But after I'm dead and gone, and it doesn't affect, even if I'm alive, if people want to make fan fiction and play around with it, I'm like, ultimately, that's fine. Because what are that's just my, so I don't know. Yeah. So I can understand, but I respect people who would not want that.
Yeah. Seeing it, I haven't thought about it that way, but yeah, if I was a prolific artist and I died, run that up, get that money. I don't care. Right. I'm dead.
I will say on record, when I pass away, I do expect someone to keep weekly coming up with new ways to explain how awesome TJ is. I do not hold rights to that particular creative bit. Yeah.
You have to buy the rights from me, though.
Yeah, I think I might pass it on. I might just put it in my will.
Put it in my will. In your will.
Nick Polk gets half of my books, but is obligated once a week to call TJ and tell him something new about his own lore, because it's not just like TJ's cool. It's a whole lore thing. I think at this point he was created before the Earth to do podcast or something. If I'm following my own storyline, I think someone could take all my intros and put together their own story of who TJ is.
A TJ Silmarillion.
Yeah. I think they should. Someone should do that.
It's like the cover pages of One Piece. They all make different little mini arcs.
Ooh.
Yeah. That's what TJ intros are. I mean, so let's bring this into some biblical stuff real quick before we start ending this, because this is already kind of long. But there are a lot of stuff biblically where we have biblical scholars making arguments back and forth, and some of them seem like they're really inconsequential, and some of them I'm like, wait a minute, I can see why that would be an issue, right? So I'm gonna throw out a few examples and then get Nick to tell us why this does or does not matter. So the Torah, a lot of people say, in my camp, would say that there were multiple different authors. Some redactors came later, put it all together for a cohesive story. And there's a lot of evidence in the text to kind of say that. But a lot of people think that Moses wrote all of it with a little asterisk of, except for that part where he died. Someone came in and wrote that part so that it was posted. So it was published after Moses died and someone else wrote that bit. So that's one postmortem thing in the Bible. Isaiah. There are so many arguments about who wrote Isaiah. There are people who think there were 3 different Isaiahs. Because the events of Isaiah took so long, it was literally impossible for one person to have lived through it all. So it's just one of those things of did multiple people write it? Did Isaiah write some of it and someone came out later to finish it? What happened with the book of Isaiah? Same thing with Daniel, except for that was very clearly not meant to be literal, because it's the same character throughout the book who lived a few thousand years old. Doesn't work. Sorry, Christian. Song of Songs is another, I think, really good example. It was all evidence points to the idea that Song of Songs was written well after Solomon's death, probably in the style of a Greek play. So probably around that time where Greeks were ruling most of the world. But it was very clearly written from the perspective of Solomon. So it's one of those, wait a minute, you're writing it as if Solomon wrote this, but it very clearly, just by the type of literature it is, Solomon didn't write this.
Yeah.
The Gospels also have this.
It's like a fake autobiography.
Yeah.
Someone wrote a fake autobiography for somebody. I can't remember what I'm thinking about, but it's really funny.
The Gospels are another one. Some of the Gospels are said to be written 100 years after the person it's named after was alive. So it's this wasn't firsthand witness. So a lot of the times they're saying, firsthand witnesses had to write the Gospel. And it's well, if it was written 100 years after the events, that was not a firsthand witness. People in ancient Near East did not live 120 years long. That wasn't happening. So there are a lot of examples like this. I think the Gospels are one of the ones that's a little bit more contentious, because people wait a minute, it had to be firsthand or else it doesn't count. Even Song of Songs seems wait a minute, are we being lied to in the Bible? Because Alma didn't write this, but it kind of seems like we're supposed to think he did. So with all these kind of examples, does any of this matter, Nick? Does it matter who wrote the Bible, if it was published post-mortem or any of that?
I guess it just depends on what is valuable to you. If you are somebody who values that these stories have to be historical to a T, besides, the parables or whatever, then I could see how that could be an issue. So I'm not going to disrespect anybody like that. I do not share that worldview, so I do not have that problem. Everything that you're saying, I tend to agree with, the things that you kind of explained. We're kind of working on different things, because right now we're talking about art in the context of like a capitalist system where people make money off of it. And at this point, religious texts were written, and some of these were just letters too, given religious significance later by church councils. So these weren't things written for the specific purpose of like developing a religion, which we would call cultism now, right? They were natural things that were written by humans that humans later decided were divinely inspired. It just depends on what your purpose is with them. I think it depends, because I've taken this longer too, but I'm doing some research on Tolkien and different ideologues who use Tolkien differently. And I have an issue when people try to turn Tolkien into a tool for like atheism, where they're like, God's not in the Lord of the Rings, so you have to be an atheist. Or people are like, Tolkien was a conservative Catholic, so if you don't love Reagan, then you don't really like Tolkien. Those people exist, and you're like, please just like go away, or like take a nap. And I don't know. So anyway, same with the Christians, where people are like, the Gospels are like this, or this particular such and such agenda, and if you don't align with it, you're gonna go to hell. And to those people, I say, hell doesn't exist. So,
yeah, that's funny.
Tolkien was a huge fan of Reagan, but not because he was conservative. He just thought he was a really good actor.
Yeah, he loved that movie with him and the monkey. I don't.
Wait, is this like real, or are y'all just making this up?
I hope we're making it up.
Yeah, making it up.
I had the realization a while ago when we were doing systematic ecology, and I was reviewing one of my favorite Christmas movies. I think it was Miracle on 34th Street we were talking about, and I realized Tolkien and Lewis were both alive when this came out. It's possible that those two guys went to the theater as buddies and watched this film, and I will never know. And that might be the first question I ask when I get to heaven. I'm like, yo, Lewis, did you and Tolkien go see any Christmas movies together in the theater?
You know what's crazy to me that I think about a lot? Rosa Parks could have seen Shrek 2 before she died.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And that's what TJ's going to be asking when he gets up to heaven.
I think about that all the time.
Yo, Rosa.
Did she? Did she see Shrek 1 and like it so much that she saw Shrek 2 the year she died?
I hope she at least saw Shrek 1.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, man. Going back to the Bible stuff, some of it actually is challenging for me, specifically, not because like I care if they actually wrote it or not. I really don't. I don't care if Moses wrote the books or if someone else wrote. Like, I think it changes the context, which does change some of the meaning. So as far as like doing exegetical work, yeah, it matters. But as far as like my own spiritual life, okay, cool. I was wrong. Got some of that context. I'll change the context and learn the Bible anew with a new perspective. And that's cool. Like, I just get to learn more. That's fine. I don't think it's going to cost my soul or anything like that. But I think the thing I struggle with is a lot of these books, like Song of Songs, like some of the Gospels, they would not be in the Bible that I read if the people knew what I think I know. You know, like if the people who canonize the scripture knew some of what I think I know, they would have thrown everything but Mark out, basically. Maybe John. Matthew and Luke wouldn't have been there. And I'm like, wait a minute. But there's a lot of meaning in Matthew and Luke that I've applied to my life. And if it wasn't part of scripture, that would impact who I am as a person, you know? So there's some stuff that I'm like, that's challenging for me because it wouldn't be scripture. And I don't know what to do with that other than going, yeah, that's complicated. It's like almost like I want to be wrong because I like that it's scripture, but then it's like maybe it was divinely inspired that they didn't know the full truth so that I would be able to read Matthew one day, you know? I don't know. Hard to say.
Yeah, I think it just depends too on. This is like totally tangential. I'm not gonna. I'd change my mind. I'm not gonna get into that.
Wait a minute. I want to know.
I was just gonna say there's the study of religions, and you can see when things are naturally arise, usually in the history of religious development, even as recent as like Rastafarianism, which was like more formalized in the 30s, and it was connected to like a political movement in the freedom movement of Jamaica from British rule, which a religion that's less than 100 years old in our lifetime and practiced by a lot of people. So anyway, I think there's different purposes, and if I was writing a fan fiction like L. Ron Hubbard and I was like, hey, what's up, sci-fi, it's a religion now.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
True. Oh, man, I don't know. I am glad we have the books that we have. It also, though, I guess the thing for me, it also challenges is like, maybe there are other books that we're missing out on because people misunderstood the context originally that we should study a little bit closer. So maybe that's my big takeaway is study
Gospel
more
of
books
Thomas
rather than less books.
Gospel of Mary Magdalene.
Nick's just going to start saying different books that'll upset Christian. Wait, I got one.
Ooh, The Wisdom of Thunder.
The graphic novelization of Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Playboy magazine. Sorry.
What was the Genesis 1 actually based off? Like the first two things of Genesis? Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
Did you say
Gilgamesh.
Beyblade?
Yeah. You haven't seen Beyblade Metal Fusion?
Put it in the Bible.
Moses
The Holy
split the Red
Spirit said,
Sea
let
with
it rip.
See, this is what happened. We spent the last two times me and Nick were on the podcast saying too many nice things about Christians. So now we just trying to poke at them. And with that, Daniel did not live long enough to go through all the events of the book of Daniel. So that wasn't literal. All right, we can wrap up now.
I want to make it abundantly clear. I'm not joking. Canonically, in the Beyblade universe, Moses split the Red Sea with a Beyblade.
Is that real?
That's real.
That's incredible.
That's my new favorite fact.
Yeah. I don't know if that means Christianity is canon or I don't know. I have no idea.
What's the formal religion in Beyblade?
Oh boy.
No clue.
So one thing we always like to ask at the end of our show is if you had to provide a single tangible action that would help people decide to watch Beyblade and also have greater Christian unity, what's something practical they can do right now that would cause them to do both of those things?
Just think of somebody specifically, whether it's if it's somebody from a different Christian denomination, a different religion, political party, somebody that you like, you dislike, pray for them. And not in like a way that's like, oh, I hope they come and see things my way, but pray for them that they would flourish under what God wants for their life.
And that they would find Beyblade.
Yeah, and Beyblade, sorry.
Naturally.
Yeah.
So if we do that, if everyone prays for one person that doesn't align with them and tells them a specific Beyblade series to watch, Metal Fusion's okay. What would happen?
I think we would just see more peace emerge from communities. I think we would see less hate, less violence, and I think we would just see a more flourishing society. Even if people don't believe in prayer, positively meditating on people's well-being is a thing. So that's what I think would happen.
All right. So before we wrap up, we like to ask everyone to share a moment where they saw God recently, whether it be a blessing, challenge, moment of worship. We call this the God moment. You should be familiar, listener. I hope you are too. Or you're not, and this is your first time. Welcome to the show. But Josh, I always make Josh go first. Is there a moment in your life where you saw God in recently that you'd like to share today?
Yes, there's a few. I was gonna feel bad because it's basically the same as my last God moment, but TJ wasn't here for that. Actually, neither of you were here for that. Perfect. So that Judah and the Lion album I mentioned earlier, I just I continue to be challenged by it. It is so weird. So I mentioned last time that like listening through it, I was comparing it kind of to like the Taylor Swift stuff of like her being like, my exes suck. And him kind of working through this, like, yeah, he was angry, but also dismissive, but also this wasn't all her fault. It's also my fault. And it's kind of like, it's not a Christian music. And yet he gets to this part where he's like, I wish for the best for you. And I'm like, man, that is just so deeply challenging because like people aren't like that naturally, you know, like that's just not the state of normal humanity to be like that. Not saying that June Lion's superhuman, but I'm not saying they're not Avengers. But I think just as I continue to listen and continue to just kind of hear this like raw emotion and just the challenge of moving past stuff with healing and love, and rather than just moving past it so that, okay, I'm not hurt by that anymore, you know, but learning to heal even more than just not being hurt and instead finding love in those moments. I don't know. I'm just still being challenged by that and wrestling with that. So I'm gonna stick with that.
All right. I'll go next. Give you plenty of time, Nick. We recently went on a big family vacation, which was so nice. We stopped doing it a few years ago because of some cousin issues. They worked it out.
Cousins.
We're all friends again. Cousins. But it's super great, even as busy as everyone is now, that pretty much everyone has grown with a job and aspirations, that everyone's able to carve out enough time to spend a week in the mountains with their family. Super great. I love being able to spend that much time with my family, not working, just kind of hanging out. And I'm just so grateful that God let us do that after so long. All right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, Nick, do you have a God moment for us?
Yeah, I got to speak at a church last week about pop culture and discipleship, and just got to interact with some cool people and got to see some really close friends and got to spend time with them. And one of the guys that goes to that church has been a close family friend of mine for a long time. And so we're going to spend some time together tomorrow. And so just opportunities to draw me closer with friends has been really cool, and to talk about pop culture in a fun, nerdy way.
Yeah, we love that. Shout out, beer.
I'm not sure how this is a God moment, but this whole time I saw Nick's hat. I thought it said "Give Jesus a chance."
Happens every time.
Now realizing it says "Give Jeans a chance."
It's a Viacom hat.
So
I
that's
get so many people. They'll be like, "Amen, amen," and I'll have no idea what they're talking about, and then I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'm wearing my Give Jeans a Chance hat."
Yeah. So that's my God moment now. I'm not sure how that applies to my soul or spiritual health, but
That's exegetical.
I'm sure it does.
You said what?
Challenge to
That's
read
exegetical.
text more clearly so that I can fully understand the biblical meaning of things. Yeah,
All right,
that's my challenge.
So please consider sharing this episode with a friend or an enemy. Share with your cousins. Love the cousins. And check out our merch. It's on the store page. We're working on some stuff. We've got some stuff. It's super comfy, fairly budget conscious. I mean, like, if you really consider it, we're a cheap date. So
Yeah, that's mostly true. Also, check out other Anazao Ministry podcast shows. TJ mentioned how factual and truthful they are earlier. You could especially check out Christian Ashley's Why I Don't Like. He talks about why he doesn't like different shows and series and evaluates them for what they are, instead of just going on little angry rants. He's given like real reasons why he doesn't like what they did with their story. And they're all completely factual because it's his opinion. Also, check out Dummy for Theology. Season 2 is starting. Actually, it started the day before this released. So go check out Season 2, Dummy for Theology. I'll be talking about logical fallacies. Yeah.
wow, he loves those.
I sure do.
We hope you enjoyed the show. Next week, we're going to have on Pastor Derek Seagraves from Sanctuary Church in Alaska. Then we're going to be interviewing Kester Bruin, author of Mutiny, Why We Love Pirates, and How They Can Save Us. And we're going to have a week off after that before starting our upcoming series, What's Next? Where we'll be asking several guests about how to move forward after some major life events and how these different answers can teach us more about church unity. Sneak peek, little preview. First thing you should do is make sure your benefits at work are correct, because major life events let you change them. Finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on the show. Probably.
Yeah, he doesn't know though. So
Yeah, hopefully.
But once he's found out we've had Nick, I feel like he'll be obligated. He'll be like, oh man, I want to be on the same show as Nick Polk.
Yeah, me and Francis Chan, very, very tight. Very tight.
Also completely factual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Some Joyful Noises, a proud member of the Anazao Podcast Network. You can listen to other Anazao podcasts with the link that's down below in this show's description. If you have ideas for this show or would like to lead one of these episodes, then you can email us at anazaoministriespodcast@gmail.com and pitch an idea to us, and we'll talk about it and see whether or not we can make it work for you to lead your own episode. We hope to hear from you soon, and that you'll help us keep it noisy. This is the launch week for our podcast, Some Joyful Noises. The two most important things for a successful podcast is one, reliability and consistency. And then number two is the best first foot forward that you can put. Since this show has no plan and no schedule, we're going to drop the ball on consistency. That means it's extra important that we have a good first foot forward, and we're asking for your help. There's a few things you can do that'll take less than 5 minutes and cost you absolutely nothing that can help our show put our first foot forward. So here's 5 things that will take you less than 5 minutes to do for no cost that would help us. Number 1, share the show. Find a friend, share the show with someone. Number 2, rate and review our show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Number 3, go to podchaser.com and rate and review the show there. Number 4, join our Facebook group, Some Joyful Noises. And then, of course, number 5 is just enjoy the show. Be sure to subscribe, and if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can go to the menu of our podcast to select automatic download. That'll help increase our downloads and tell the algorithms that this show's really important. All of these are also going to be down below in the description in case you forget any. Thank you all again so much, and we hope you enjoy the show.